Have you ever reached out to someone only to be met with silence? That sting, that ache of being ignored, it's real, and yes, it hurts. But let me tell you something important. When someone ignores you, it's not just an empty silence. It's a sign. It's a sign that something is shifting, a sign that maybe that person isn't meant to walk with you to the next chapter, a sign that you deserve better communication, respect, and energy. Often, we chase the ones who pull away instead of paying attention to what their silence says. But today, I challenge you to stop chasing and start listening, not to their words, but to their absence, because being ignored might just be the universe's way of making space for better people, healthier love, and stronger self-worth. When someone ignores you, it might seem like nothing is happening. No words, no texts, no calls, but in truth, that silence is a form of communication. It speaks volumes even louder than spoken words. Often, we are conditioned to believe that only what's said directly to us matters, but human behavior is much deeper than that. The absence of a response is a response. Silence can mean avoidance, disinterest, discomfort, or emotional withdrawal. Sometimes, it's a passive-aggressive way to express frustration or anger without confrontation. Other times, it's a sign that the person simply doesn't value the connection as much as you do. Either way, ignoring is rarely neutral. It's a choice, an action taken by someone who is fully aware that you're waiting for acknowledgement or engagement. Understanding that silence holds meaning allows you to stop chasing closure through words and start observing actions. It frees you from constantly overanalyzing texts or waiting endlessly for a reply that may never come. The truth is, people communicate in all kinds of ways, not just through conversations, but also through consistency, effort, presence, and yes, absence. In many cases, silence reveals where someone truly stands without needing to explain themselves. If someone values you, they won't let you sit in uncertainty. If they care, they'll make the effort to clarify, to show up, to respond. But when they don't, their silence often says, "This isn't a priority for me." It may not be pleasant to hear, but recognizing that unspoken message gives you power. It allows you to shift your energy away from confusion and toward clarity. Silence is not just the lack of words, it's the presence of a message. The question is, are you listening? When someone repeatedly ignores you, it's easy to fall into self-doubt. You might question your worth, wonder what you did wrong, or assume you're being too sensitive. But in reality, their silence is less about your value and more about their priorities. Where people choose to place their time, energy, and attention speaks louder than any promise or excuse they could offer. We make time for what matters to us. No one is too busy to acknowledge someone they genuinely care about. A simple message, a short call, even a moment of honesty. These things don't require much time, but they do require intention. So when someone ignores you, it's not just a lapse in communication. It's a reflection of what and who they choose to invest in. If you consistently find yourself waiting for someone to notice you, to respond, or to show up, you're not just being overlooked. You're being deprioritized. That realization can sting, especially when you care deeply about the person, but it's also clarifying. It shows you where you stand, not by what they say, but by what they do. You begin to see the difference between being an option and being a priority. And that distinction matters because you deserve to be more than someone's occasional thought or convenience. Sometimes, people keep you on the sidelines while giving their best energy to others. They expect you to be available, patient, understanding, without giving the same in return. But true relationships, whether friendships, family bonds, or romantic partnerships, are built on mutual respect and presence. Ignoring someone sends the opposite message. It says, "You're not important right now." And while someone might have reasons, stress, distractions, personal issues, there's a difference between temporary distance and ongoing neglect. The way someone treats you when you have nothing to offer, or when they're not in need of anything from you, reveals how they really value you. If they only engage when it benefits them or when it's convenient, then their priorities are clear, and unfortunately, you're not one of them. Understanding this truth doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop chasing. It means you stop settling for breadcrumbs of attention from someone who can't make room for you in their life. Their actions, or in this case inaction, draw the map. You just have to be willing to follow it. When someone ignores you, it's natural to internalize that silence. You start thinking, what did I do wrong? Or am I not good enough? That reaction is human, but it's also often misplaced, because being ignored isn't necessarily a verdict on your character, your worth, or your value. It's not always a reflection of who you are. More often, it's a mirror showing you something about the other person, their mindset, their emotional capacity, their priorities, or even their limitations. People respond to life from the lens of their own experiences, traumas, fears, and insecurities. Sometimes when someone pulls away or goes silent, it's not because you've failed them, it's because they're struggling with their own internal battles. They may not know how to process emotions, how to confront discomfort, or how to communicate maturely. Their silence, while painful, might reveal more about their emotional immaturity than anything you've done. It's important to understand that people often project. They may withdraw because they fear vulnerability. They may ignore you because they don't know how to handle connection. Or they may distance themselves simply because they don't have the emotional tools to sustain healthy relationships. In this way, their silence becomes a mirror, one that reflects the parts of themselves they haven't yet healed or developed. But when we take someone else's behavior personally, we give away our power. We start carrying the weight of someone else's emotional unreadiness. We forget that how someone treats us doesn't create our value, it only reveals their capacity to see it. That's why being ignored should never be taken as a final judgment on who you are. Just because someone didn't show up for you doesn't mean you're unworthy of someone who will. Just because someone failed to recognize your presence doesn't mean you're invisible. And just because you were left unanswered doesn't mean your voice doesn't matter. In many ways, how people treat others is a reflection of how they see themselves. Someone who lacks self-awareness, empathy, or maturity will likely struggle to treat others with kindness and consistency. And when you're on the receiving end of that, it's easy to think you're the problem. But you're not. Their inability to see your value doesn't diminish it. When someone ignores you, step back and look at what the silence is reflecting. Often, it's a sign that the issue lies not with you, but with their inability to hold space for real connection. Their silence holds up a mirror. The choice is yours whether to believe what it reflects, or to look deeper and realize your worth remains unchanged. In any healthy relationship, whether it's a friendship, a romantic bond, or a family connection, reciprocity is essential. It's the invisible thread that keeps people connected, balanced, and emotionally safe. Reciprocity doesn't mean keeping score, but it does mean there's a mutual exchange of energy, attention, care, and respect. So when someone consistently ignores you, they are breaking that balance, and that's not just inconsiderate, it's unsustainable. Being the only one who initiates conversations, checks in, reaches out, and holds the emotional weight of the connection is exhausting. You might tell yourself that they're just going through something, or that you're strong enough to carry the burden for both of you. But relationships aren't supposed to feel like one-sided labor. If you're the only one making the effort, you're not in a relationship. You're in a pattern of self-sacrifice, and over time that can quietly drain your self-esteem. You deserve to be met with the same energy you give. If you care, that care should be acknowledged. If you show up, someone should be standing there too, not months later, not when it's convenient, but consistently and with intent. That's what true connection looks like, people choosing each other, not just when it's easy, but especially when it matters. Many of us were taught to keep giving, even when it's not returned, to be the bigger person, to forgive endlessly, to wait patiently. But there's a difference between kindness and self-abandonment. Giving love freely is beautiful, but continuing to pour into someone who leaves you empty, that's a slow erosion of your own emotional health. You are not difficult for wanting effort. You are not needy for craving consistency. These are basic emotional needs, not luxuries. When someone ignores you, they're showing you what they're willing to offer. And if what they offer falls short of what you need and deserve, it's okay to recognize that and step back. Reciprocity doesn't mean the relationship is always perfectly balanced, but it should feel fair. It should feel like you are seen, heard, and valued, and when you're ignored, it's not just a lack of words, it's a lack of investment, a lack of effort, a lack of regard for your emotional presence. At some point, you must ask yourself, am I holding on to this connection because of what it is, or because of what I hope it will become? Because if the only thing keeping a relationship alive is your effort, that's not love, that's survival. And you weren't made to survive someone's silence. You were made to thrive in mutual, intentional, two-sided connection. When someone ignores you, the first emotion that usually surfaces is rejection. It feels personal, sharp, and wounding, like you've been dismissed or deemed unworthy. The mind rushes to fill in the blanks. I wasn't good enough. They lost interest. Something must be wrong with me. But what if, instead of a rejection, that silence is actually a redirection? A subtle nudge from life that says, not here, look elsewhere, there's more for you. It can be hard to see it in the moment, especially when you care about the person and have invested emotionally in the relationship. Silence feels final, the lack of closure is maddening, you want explanations, reasons, anything to make sense of the disconnect, but sometimes the absence of a response is the answer. And that answer might be guiding you towards something, or someone far more aligned with your values, needs, and emotional capacity. Redirection often comes in disguise. It looks like being ghosted. It looks like unanswered texts. It looks like the cold shoulder or a friend who disappears when you need them most. And yes, it hurts. But beneath that pain is clarity. You begin to realize that being ignored is not always about you. It's often a reflection of incompatibility, timing, emotional maturity, or lack of respect. And while that realization may sting, it also sets you free, free to stop clinging to one-sided connections, free to stop shrinking yourself to remain tolerable or likable, free to stop waiting for someone who isn't coming, and most importantly, free to reclaim your energy and invest it in places where it's appreciated, reciprocated, and respected. When you're being redirected, it means you're being pulled away from something that cannot support the next level of your growth. You may not understand it now, but later, maybe weeks, maybe years down the line, you'll look back and realize that what felt like a painful ending was actually the start of something better. The silence that once broke your heart created space for healing. The person who faded out of your life made room for someone more present, more honest, and more available. Redirection is a quiet blessing. It doesn't come with fireworks or explanations. It comes in stillness, in unanswered messages, in unmet expectations. But in that space, if you listen closely, you'll hear your own voice returning. You'll hear your own worth echoing back. You'll begin to feel the subtle shift from pain to perspective, because what leaves your life is often making space for what's meant to enter. And what you once saw as rejection becomes the very path to something deeper, healthier, and more whole. When someone chooses to ignore you instead of communicating openly, it often has less to do with you and more to do with their emotional maturity. Ignoring, ghosting, or giving silent treatment may feel like power or control to the one doing it, but in truth, it's a form of emotional avoidance. It's a sign that someone may lack the tools, courage, or self-awareness needed to deal with uncomfortable emotions, accountability, or meaningful dialogue. Emotionally mature people don't disappear when things get hard. They don't run from connection or leave others in confusion. Instead, they express themselves. Even when it's difficult, they understand the value of clarity over comfort. They know that honesty, even when painful, is a form of respect. On the other hand, emotionally immature individuals often retreat into silence because it's easier than being honest, easier than admitting they're overwhelmed, unsure, or unwilling to reciprocate effort. Ignoring someone may be their way of escaping conflict, dodging emotional responsibility, or maintaining a false sense of control. But it is, at its core, a passive-aggressive act. Rather than saying, I need space, or this isn't working for me, they say nothing at all, forcing you to make sense of their absence and carry the emotional confusion alone. That's not strength, it's avoidance. It's an unwillingness to confront their own discomfort, and in doing so, they transfer that discomfort onto you. Sometimes we mistake this kind of behavior as mysterious or complicated, thinking there's a hidden depth to their silence. But in most cases, it's not complexity, it's a lack of growth. It takes maturity to have hard conversations. It takes courage to say, I'm not ready for this, or I don't feel the same way, or even I'm struggling and need time. Silence, in contrast, requires no courage, only distance. This isn't to say that emotionally immature people are bad people. Many of them are simply doing the best they can with the emotional tools they've been given. But it does mean that unless they actively work to grow and become more self-aware, they will continue to handle relationships in unhealthy ways, ways that leave others feeling dismissed, confused, and hurt. Being ignored by someone emotionally immature can make you feel small, powerless, or invisible. But that's because they haven't learned how to hold space for others, especially not in moments that require honesty, empathy, and mutual effort. Their silence becomes a reflection of their unreadiness, not a verdict on your worth. And understanding this allows you to detach from the need for their validation. It reminds you that the way someone handles discomfort says everything about them, and nothing about what you deserve. Being ignored can feel like a wound to the heart, a subtle but persistent pain that lingers in the absence of acknowledgement. But in that silence, if you allow yourself to listen closely, there's an opportunity for awakening. Sometimes the most profound realizations come not from what others give you, but from what they withhold. When someone ignores you, it can become the very trigger that forces you to look inward and reevaluate how you see yourself, what you've tolerated, and what you truly deserve. At first, it might not feel like a gift. It feels more like a betrayal, a rejection, or an emotional dismissal. But after the initial shock fades, the silence can teach you something powerful. You've been giving too much of yourself to someone who hasn't earned it. You begin to see the imbalance clearly, the unanswered messages, the one-sided conversations, the endless effort you've been making just to feel seen, and that clarity can be both painful and liberating. Because once you recognize the gap between what you give and what you receive, you also begin to recognize something else. Your worth has never been defined by someone else's ability to see it. You don't become less valuable because someone fails to acknowledge you. Their inability to appreciate you does not make you any less whole. On the contrary, it shines a light on your need to stop chasing validation and start honoring your own needs. Self-worth is not arrogance. It's not about feeling better than others. It's about knowing that you are enough exactly as you are and you don't need to beg for the bare minimum. When you embrace your worth, you stop settling for silence. You stop interpreting someone's lack of attention as a sign to work harder. Instead, you take it as a sign to turn inward, reclaim your energy, and protect your peace. Being ignored can lead you to ask the hard questions. Why do I tolerate being emotionally sidelined? Why do I keep proving myself to someone who doesn't show up? What part of me believes that love has to be earned through pain? And once you begin to unpack those questions, you begin to heal. You begin to see that being ignored isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a deeper, stronger relationship with yourself. You realize that the real connection you've been craving isn't from someone who goes silent when things get real. It's from someone who values you openly, who chooses you without hesitation, who sees you and stays present. But most importantly, you begin to understand that you don't need to wait for someone else to validate your worth, because it was never theirs to define. It's yours to reclaim. So yes, when someone ignores you, it hurts, it confuses you, shakes your confidence, and leaves you questioning your place in their life. But with time and clarity, you begin to understand that their silence was not a punishment, it was a message. A sign, a turning point. It's a sign to stop chasing those who don't see you and start standing firm in your own presence. It's a reminder to stop begging for scraps of attention and instead seek spaces where your energy is respected and returned. It's a signal to look inward, to reconnect with yourself, worth, and to realize that love, respect, and emotional safety should never be one-sided. Sometimes being ignored is not the end of something. It's the beginning of your awakening. It's life gently closing one door so you can finally walk through another, one that leads to healthier connections, deeper self-respect, and peace that isn't dependent on anyone else's presence. Remember this: your value does not decrease because someone failed to notice it. Their silence does not define your voice. You are still enough, you are still worthy, and the right people, the ones who see, hear, and honor you, will never make you question that.